like to welcome the elected officials. We have Councilwoman Stereo, our CRA attorney, Mr. Zakowicz. I think I saw Councilman Galvin somewhere around. And all the staff members who are here, members of the business community, residents, I'd like to welcome all of you. This is the third meeting in our series of Downtown Action Plan initiative from our Community Planning and the Development Department led by Tanya Wilson-Sejour. And this meeting actually is planned for the citizens and business owners to review the action plan, which is part of our comprehensive downtown redevelopment plan, to get feedback from our residents and all the businesses within the North Miami area and what they would like to see as part of our downtown redevelopment and our overall master plan. Recent data and analysis reveals that the city of North Miami is built out. Since we have limited vacant properties remaining on our long-term revenue growth has dropped, redevelopment in areas inside the city's downtown district and along all our major corridors is what we're looking at. Secondly, the city has several studies over the past years that have been shelved. We all know that we heard about these downtown redevelopment, downtown master planning efforts over the last 20 years, I would say. We have seen a lot of these, and I think what we are trying to do now is to get some plan or move these shelves or these plans that we have on the shelves and put it into action. And I think the initiative that Tanya has and the drive that she has to move this forward, and I think our elected officials as well, their aim is to actually have economic development and economic growth in our downtown. The only thing that will actually stir this or cause some sort of development to take place is with this initiative. And Tanya keep reiterating, the city is not growing. And if it's not growing, what happens? Right. If we are not growing or there's no growth, it's death. So this time has come now, we have to do something. There's no economic growth. We have to do something as a community, some initiative to start our downtown redevelopment and our process for redevelopment. There's no longer any time for us to start looking at one single unit of development. What we're looking at is a cohesive, comprehensive effort to move the whole area within our downtown. There's going to be lots of initiatives that Tanya will describe, lots of comments from the public and from the residents as well. And this is one of the main reasons why we have this third and last forum, to get all the ideas from everyone. And at the end, what is done is we are going to reprioritize or place these ideas on a priority list in order of a matrix would be set up, and each one of these ideas would be reprioritized and would be presented at our in our July council meeting as our final action plan as part of our comprehensive master plan efforts. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Tanya to give you a little more details on the plan.
Good evening. That's a little better. I am Tanya Wilson-Sejour, the planning manager with Community Planning and Development. I'd like to thank you all for coming out to the third forum. Just a show of hands, how many people had an opportunity to attend forum 1 and 2? Okay, this is good. This is good. The majority of the room then, for you, tonight's information is new. It's safe to say that. So I'm just going to do a brief recap so we can understand how we got here. Back in May of 2013, the mayor and council had adopted a downtown master plan and major corridor plan. And in that plan was outlined a stream of recommendations as to how North Miami could transform its downtown. One of the things we did as a part of the process was to do an economic analysis. And what was clear in the analysis is that over the series of years, the city's developments have pretty much plateaued. And as you know, the developments are attached to our revenue streams, the taxes that we collect. And the economists pointed out that since the last 2 decades, North Miami has plateaued in its development and in its advancements. And the recommendation was made that something needs to be done. Either you redevelop to create new opportunities or you annex. At this point, you've pretty much put yourself in a holding pattern, was the recommendation that was given. So since that document was adopted, the mayor and council said, move forward. We want you to move forward with implementation. And that's the journey that we began back in January of this year. We took the mayor and council on a road trip, looking at examples of what other communities similar to North Miami had done to transform itself and to redevelop its inner cores and its major downtown areas. So we took a trip to Delray Beach. We looked at examples of mixed use in that area. Delray was unique. Their focus was on spending money on the private spaces. So all the grant funds that they had gotten, all the CRA funds, were particularly invested in facade programs and business regeneration programs. And then we took a trip to Fort Myers. Fort Myers was a different type of model. They invested most of their funds in the public realm. They invested in streetscapes and landscapes and civic space improvements. So before us, we had 2 paths. One where it was invested in the private sector, and the other was an investment in public sector. So our city, we recognized that we could approach a hybrid. We could have a hybrid approach where we wouldn't necessarily go in one direction or the other, but we could do a blending of both. So what you'll see in tonight's presentation is North Miami's hybrid approach to redevelopment, where we believe investment has to be made in the private realm and in the private sector, but certainly what we own, what government owns, we believe is the first step in beginning that catalyst in transforming the city's downtown and the major corridor areas. So tonight I'm going to describe, just to do an introduction of the partners that we've had along the process. We have Keith and Schnarrs, that was responsible for the creation of the Downtown Master Plan, and we'll have Debbie Love, she's an urban designer with Keith and Schnarrs, we'll be starting out the presentation tonight. We'll also have Bob Cambrick, and Bob Cambrick is one of our charismatic facilitators that's been with us along the process, and I tease him all the time, but Bob is a true planner at heart. He's passionate about the process, and I think we have been fortunate to have consultants who truly believe in North Miami's transformation and have had several years of experience in working with cities just like ours to help to craft the vision and to help with the implementation strategies. And so I'm happy that we have a very capable team in place. We also have Mr. Steve Zelkowitz, and Steve is no stranger to us. He's actually affiliated with the CRA, and he's with Gray Robinson, PA. Steve was instrumental in the redevelopment of the city of Miramar. I don't know how many of you knew that, but Miramar actually, when we met with that staff, described him as the mastermind behind the public-private partnership approach that Miramar had used. So tonight we're going to have Steve talk a little bit about the success story that Miramar has had with doing the public-private partnerships. And then last but not least, we have Mr. Alex David, and he's with the Cordino Group. And Alex has been tasked with working on our conceptual plan. So without further ado, before I forget, how could I forget? I do not want to forget the wonderful partners that we've had in the process. Our refreshments were provided tonight by 2 local restaurants. We have KC that provided healthy foods. And also, we have Randy's Restaurant. Thank you. It's a good thing we have an engineer on board. Thank you, Mr. Manager. We have Randy's Restaurant, also that's located on Northwest 7th Avenue. This was just our small way of showcasing some of the local assets that we have. And we realized that for many of these restaurants, they're unknown. I don't know how many people have been to Randy's before, but tonight you got a taste, just a tidbit of North Miami's restaurants or local success stories, and we hope that you will go and patronize and visit these restaurants at a later opportunity. So without further ado, I just want to invite, the student competition, the very important piece. As a part of the process, we have a civic space competition that's underway. We had sent out a call for ideas several months ago, inviting the university community to partner with us in this process. And lo and behold, we were amazed at the talent and the commitment and the participation that we've received in the process. We challenged the university community and we said, you have bright minds, you have young architectural students, urban design students who are capable of coming up with concepts for North Miami civic spaces. And the response was overwhelming. We had over 20 students that are vying and competing for the top role of obtaining an internship with the Cordino Group. The winner for the civic space competition will receive an internship with the Cordino Group, and of course an opportunity to provide input and design renderings for the final conceptual plans. I want to thank the students that are here tonight and that have partnered with us. And before we begin, I'm going to allow our elected officials to say a few words. Councilman Sterrell, this is her district, so Councilman, if you'd like to say a few words before we begin.
Good afternoon, everyone. And again, thank you so much for coming. This is one of those meetings that people actually show interest. That has been for a while. I have been in the City Council for the past 9 years. And for the past 9 years, we have been thinking, wanting to have a downtown. And finally, it seemed like it's coming along very well. And again, all the credit goes to staff, and please put your hands together for the great staff of the City of North Miami. And tonight, this is a proof to show you that, yeah, we might have a lot of bad thing going out there on North Miami, but truly, inside the system of North Miami, we are okay. As you can see that Tanya, through the city manager's office, is doing everything that they can to make sure that by next year, I'm not saying we're going to have a downtown, but at least we'll have some pieces going around that you guys will, to make sure that we are serious about our downtown. And usually when you heard the city council members or a mayor is talking about a project, is usually like, this is for my district, but this one is for our city, and the city really need the togetherness where we come to together for one project. And tonight is all about City of North Miami and downtown, which I really support, and I pledge to always continue to support downtown. Again, thank you so much, Tanya, for all your hard work. Thanks.
I'm going to invite Mayor Benami to come forward and say a few words before we begin.
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the City of North Miami, I want to welcome you all for coming in at our third workshop about our downtown. Like Councilwoman Steele already said, downtown is not about, it's going to be in the northeast of 125th, but downtown is for North Miami. Whether you're from the west, the east, the north, or the south side of the city, the downtown is for you. And we are happy tonight that residents from District 4 and other people interested in our downtown are here tonight, and hopefully we get your input, and Councilwoman said by next year, and hopefully in a few months we start seeing movement about our downtown. Like I said before, the City of North Miami, it's a great city. Now we have 4 council members, and you have Councilwoman Marie-Hélène Sterrell representing District 4. We have Councilman Scott Galvin from District 1, and we know Councilwoman Carol Keys. She's not here with us this afternoon. She's traveling, from what I understand. And we have 4 members of the council. We may have different view about how to get things done in the City of North Miami, but we all love the City of North Miami, and we want to see the city moving forward. And again, welcome at that third workshop, and businesses, residents, and let's work together. And in a few months, we can see a downtown start moving forward. Again, thank you.
And last but not least, I'm going to invite Councilman Scott Galvin just to come forward to say a few words.
I promise I'll be very quick. Back when I was president of the Chamber, North Miami Chamber of Commerce in the late 90s, we were talking about downtown and how it had so much potential. So it's really nice, 15 years later, to see that we're finally at this moment of getting something done. So thanks to all of you for taking the time to be here. Thanks to all of the energy you're going to give going forward. And I really, really feel that our moment has arrived and you're going to finally see real progress on the downtown North Miami area. So thanks, guys.
I'm going to invite Debbie Love with Key Pensioners to come forward to kick off the presentation. Thank you.
Well, thank you all for coming tonight. As Tanya said and everybody said, this is our third forum that we have put together to talk about the downtown and the excitement. I'm the project manager for the Downtown Master Plan, and it's been an honor to have worked with so many people in the community to get it, all the feedback, all of the commentaries, all the ideas went into the development of this plan, and now Alex and his group are trying to visualize those things and bring it to fruition through Tanya and through the city. In November of 2012, as Tanya said, we were asked to take a look, as the city manager mentioned, you had a lot of plans on the shelves, you had a lot of studies that were done, so we were tasked to take a look at all of those and kind of bring them together, look at the constraints, look at all the opportunities the city has, complete an economic and market analysis and assessment, and kind of work with the community to decide what do you need, what do you want, how do you want it to look, architectural styles, the types of uses, what you are envisioning for the city, and then to put all of that together into a plan and with guidelines that will help to guide the future development. As you can see, this is actually the downtown area. This is actually the study area. It included all of these corridors, and you see down here along Northeast 125th. But for the purposes that we're here right now, is it's really to deal with just the downtown area. This is the boundary of what is actually considered to be the city's downtown. And what we are working on now is the action plan that provides that nexus between the plan and the implementation of the plan. So that's where we are tonight, and that's where we're working on. So we're going to talk to you a little bit about these things and what we've come up with. There's been a whole process that's been involved, and it may seem like there's not been things happening, but there's been a lot of things going on. We completed several of these things. We're now working, let me back this up. The creation of the Downtown Action Plan Advisory Committee, that is huge. That has now finally been accomplished. We'll put, right now, it's still under construction, but we're soon to have that piece finished as well. We're finishing up the forums. We've completed all the pricing of all the capital projects that are in the plan, and we are beginning to draft the actual action plan. So looking at the forums, the first thing we want to tell you is, what did we hear? There's a lot of things that Bob's going to talk to you a little bit about what we heard. And then, what are the priorities? Those are the things that you all have said at the previous forums that you felt were the important things to focus upon. And with that, I'm going to ask Bob to come up here and start to talk to you about those issues.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me without the microphone? Okay, because I have to move around a little bit. It's a little hyperactivity. One of the things that's done very well is that basically through the process, every time the citizens, the residents, the business owners, the property owners have been asked, what are the key components of this that you believe need to be included in order to make it a success? And so in each forum, we've been able to get that feedback. And so this is kind of a summary of some of the things that have been discussed, is that when you talk about downtown, you may need to look at expanding the boundaries a little bit so that it goes from 6th Avenue to 12th Avenue and instead of 123rd to 126th. Making the city more walkable. You offer some incentives for people to be able to do that, to make that part of their development plan. Establish a design review board once you come up with design standards so that you begin to have a consistent look, feel. When people enter downtown, they know that they're there and there's a sense of community there. Adding bicycle paths, that also adds for pedestrian walkway as well. And one of the things also that's going to require coordination with the state and DOT is being able to look at the idea of making 125th 2 lanes. The terms that everyone uses these days is put the road on a diet. In order to be able to walk and have an active downtown, putting in shades, trees, adding public gathering spaces, being able to improve how the back alleys work. And when you'll see votes along here. This is what the first forum, when we did a summary of all of the responses received, this is what people decided were the ones that they felt were a priority. Looking at creating pocket parks. That's where you have a lot that may be vacant right now, and being able to use that as an active space with shading, seating, potentially cafe dining. It becomes part of your downtown. It becomes an attraction to come downtown. Having street furniture, poles, creating a public realm, public spaces. One of the concerns, and this needs to be better clarified, adding parking garages. The issue is not so much that there's not enough parking in downtown, it is putting it in the right location in order for it to be able to be an attractor and also to help the activities that you're going to have going on there. Being able to look at proper turn lanes as an idea, adding traffic signs. Being able to try to look at the idea that taking your heavy traffic and having a bypass and having the local traffic people that are going there to shop, recreate, and also for residential purposes, that's one of the other activities that's been added or suggested added. One of the things that they talked about, address the traffic at 5 points intersection. I kept hearing about this, and at the second forum I learned about it because I went across the street and I found out what the 5 point intersection happens to be. I almost became your permanent planner as part of the pavement. And then also potentially looking at creating a trolley service to incorporate the idea that FEC station, what's happening there is you've been hearing about all over Florida. One of the other things that's happening is that Tri-Rail is looking at trying to add commuter service along that same line. So you have commuter service that will run from Miami to Palm Beach, and then it'll link back over to the other line. But they're looking at North Miami as one of the locations for a Tri-Rail station. And that's going to be called the Coastal Link. And so the idea is that comes in, getting a trolley that's going to connect that activity to downtown. So you have people that can do a day trip. They may leave Palm Beach, come down to North Miami, take the trolley, come to downtown, eat, shop, visit. One of the other things is being able to make sure as part of the process, there are various planning things that are going on, coordinating those things, I-95 master plan, trying to separate the bike paths out so that they're not going to be engaging with cars, they're not going to be at risk. And also using your documents. The comprehensive plan is your blueprint for growth in your community. Add standards in there to make sure that you have the type of architectural standards and streetscapes that you want to see for the future. Those things are able to be maintained. One of the main things, economic incentives and opportunities. Trying to figure out how do you begin to incentivize the existing businesses as well as new businesses through various activities. Being able to capitalize on what's already there, your antique and art retail stores. Looking at eliminating some of the industrial zoning, and we're not clear, that was a suggestion, but there may not be any industrial zoning right now in downtown, but we want to make sure the uses that are there are compatible to what you're trying to achieve. You've got great assets in 2 universities here, with Johnson Wales, I did it right this time, and FIU. And one of the things is being able to look at, they both have opportunities to be able to open restaurants and doing incubators and building on. You've got great restaurants already, how we help build off those as well. Looking at how do you assist homeowners and businesses with a facade, a paint improvement program so it begins to improve the visual look of what's already downtown.
Those are the higher votes.
Yes. The ones that I've just been told, the ones that shake are the ones that have a higher vote. And one of the main things also is the idea of being able to look at either monthly, potentially quarterly, semi-annually, or at least annually, creating monthly social mixers. A lot of communities do that already, where you basically you have a set date. Some people may call it the first Friday of the month, and so that people come downtown. I live in Hollywood. Hollywood, every Friday evening, the Hollywood Young Circle Park, that is dedicated for kids. The Park and Recs department come out. They put out the bounce houses. The kids get their face painted. Sometimes they're showing movies, but it's all geared toward family and kids. It's every Friday evening. And so you create this kind of activity where it brings people downtown on a regular basis. They know those things are going on. And that's the same thing in terms of figure out other ways that you increase after 5 p.m. activities. One of the things they always say is an active downtown is an 18-hour downtown. You know, when 5 o'clock comes, if all your businesses are closing down, that's because people aren't coming there because there aren't any things to do. One of the other things is tagging off of the brand. NoMi, and the idea is to NoMi is to know us. And so building off of that and then also working with a PR firm once that winds up happening. And then right here, this links back to the closing the downtown streets as a way to achieve the social mixers. And you determine where that may be. It's always going to be on a regular basis. One of the other things to do is that you not only the downtown, but you also have your central business district. And the idea potentially is to expand that to capture what's going to be happening with the expansions of both Port Everglades and Port Miami. Partnering with Biscayne Park is another potential way to begin to hit those monthly socials and increasing after 5 p.m. activities. One of the other things is that as part of those things, you want to make sure, not saying that North Miami is an unsafe community, but when you have the police presence there, it also gives people the perception that it is a safe community, and so it becomes an attractive to be there. One of the other things is adding a civic center to be able to capture trade shows, musical businesses, and attractions. And then the other thing is also trying to figure out how you tag off of two of the largest activities in Miami-Dade County, the airport and the seaport as entry points, and being able to increase advertising there so people know me as a destination for business, also for recreation and socializing. And that's what the public relations firm will be there to do. And then also one of the things is making downtown more pet-friendly and family-friendly. And so we had the boats there, but also one of the things that we found that the most popular strategy that came up was the idea that creating gateways and a central focus, such as a mega block right there where you have City Hall, the police department already, MOCA's already there, and being able to build off of that. In the last forum, we got a lot of information from the residents about the features that will go there that will begin to make that the main activity and the focus of downtown. And one of the things you're getting ready to see is that Alex is going to give you a presentation that begins to capture these words. And that's the one thing, that planners, we love words. But one of the things we want to do is begin to show you how some of these ideas may be realized. And when Alex finishes that, I want to talk with you and find out to make sure that, since some of you have not had a chance to come to the other forums, if there's anything that we may have missed. Okay? And so I'm going to turn it over to Alex and let him give you that presentation.
Okay. Good evening. Again, I'm Alex David. And with me tonight is my partner in this endeavor, the conceptual plan, Douglas Thompson, and also Ebru Ozer. They're with Landscape DE, very talented group, and I hope you're impressed with what they are going to show us. Basically, as stated, we're in our third forum. The next step after this, we'll be going to DePac for a presentation, and then after that, the City Council for the final product. What we've done was focus again, and some of you have been at the other two forums and at the City Council meeting where we kicked this off. We looked at civic spaces downtown 125th Street and the Boca Complex. And I always wanted to emphasize this. The City of North Miami is ahead of the game. About 4 years ago, the city's updated its comprehensive plan and its land development regulations. So these concepts that we're going to show you can be built now. They're shovel ready. This is just basically a few words that talk about what creates a downtown environment. It's defined, it's comfortable, it's safe, it's connected, and it's memorable. We want everyone to have a memorable experience when we go to downtown North Miami. This slide shows basically a view looking towards downtown Miami, North Miami, and what it just shows is the existing buildings, the blue single-story buildings, and I don't know if you can see that from the back, but that's what it means. The light blue are single-story buildings. The reddish color is over 1 story, and then the gold is a proposal that's in by a property owner. So we just wanted to highlight that. We also want to highlight on this slide. You'll see a number of P's. P is for parking. What's the sorry. There's so much space that's underutilized in downtown North Miami. That's what we wanted to show you. There's a great amount of public space dedicated to parking. This just focuses on the Mocha Plaza, called a mega block. Again, most of the block is parking. Again, we've had several forums, and what came out of that and the previous plan done in 2013 were a few things. Ideas for more trees and more walkability, an opportunity to take back 125th Street from FDOT and make it more user-friendly, and also types of architecture and building design that you all would want to see in this area. Again, North Miami is home to all its culinary institutions, film and education. So we wanted to start playing off of some of those things and brand the city. Know that you're coming to, know when you get to downtown North Miami. Again, these are just kind of some planning terms for key civic spaces. We want to have places to gather, pathways to get there, and in some cases have active space, other cases passive space. And then what can we do to revitalize the downtown area? What we focused on several different major points within the downtown area: 8th Avenue, 5 Points West Dixie, 132nd, the Mocha Plaza itself, and then other gateways. But what we really need to do as a city is capital improvements. Actually get the money, get the plan, and invest in the city to make these all come to fruition. The first area we want to look at is the 8th Avenue, what we're calling the linear greenway. This is the one avenue connecting City Hall, Mocha, to the educational facilities to the north along by 131st Street up to 135th. This is a main pathway. It could be a very active pathway connecting, as I said, the Civic Center to the schools and the library. These are just a few concepts for more, I guess, beautifying the street, crosswalks, more landscaping, and denoting 8th Avenue a bit better by some type of unique pavement or street markings. This is just a view up the street, and this is, I don't think he's here tonight, but as was stated, we're doing a university student presentation or call for plans, and this is one of the students' diagrams, so he is part of the competition. This is 8th Avenue now, just south of 126th Street, and with some capital improvements, we have the sidewalks, a unique paved material, and a bikeway, and signage drawing people back and forth between the two facilities. Next one is 5 Points. I know you're all familiar with this area, so it's just notated on this map. We always refer to this triangle as like a death zone almost. It's very difficult to get to. When you get to, you're there a long time and you're very hot because there's really no shade. And we're proposing that this have some type of monumental feature, such as a NoMi sign, shade tree, and better crosswalks. You could actually get from one side of 6th Avenue to across West Dixie or to the south. The crosswalks in this area are very disjointed. I won't talk about engineers, but I think it was probably designed. Anyway, so we want to try to fix this whole intersection and make it more walkable and make it really a centerpiece in the city. And I don't know how long some of you have been around, but we have the triangle there now. What was envisioned 14 years ago was a roundabout. So this could be a future, a longer range project, but initially you could do something in the short term to better that intersection. Also at 5 Points, we know there's a chevron, which could be redeveloped. Right now your code allows something like this, a mixed-use project, residential, and this is where you start bringing in more residents to downtown, and that's the whole goal. More restaurants, more retail, different types of retail, and residential. We've also, one of our other areas we looked at was West Dixie. As you know, it's a dead zone from 125th South because of it being closed off some years ago. So the businesses to the south have suffered. So what can you do to revitalize that area? So we looked at this connection from 125th down to Griffin Park. This is the way the situation, what it looks like now, an aerial. It's only a couple blocks, but it's really not very active. This is I call it Dixie dead end. This is where Dixie ends at 125th Street. It's very hard to get across to the other side walking or anything. It's not a pleasant experience. But wonder if we put in an iconic gateway feature so visitors, residents, and business owners can actually have a pleasant experience starting at 125th and being able to go down to Griffin Park with there's signage that tells you it's there. Right now, if you're driving, you don't know Griffin Park is there, and it's only a couple blocks away. So this starts to beef up that gateway intersection, 6th Avenue and West Dixie at 125th. Moving along to Griffin Park, this is another area we've looked at. Again, it's a passive park right now, but we've been looking at a lot of things we could do on public property at the Boca Mega Block and other areas. And one of the suggestions was to take a portion of Griffin Park and create a small amphitheater for local events, smaller events. It's very low key, no seating, just grass, but it's a great, I think a great site for it. One of the other areas we looked at as you're heading down South Dixie Highway is the 132nd Street Fountain. As many of you know, it was probably built, I don't know, it seems like 60 years ago. It was a long time ago. It hadn't been working in years, as far as we know. And when we started this process, it wasn't working. We thought maybe to, cleaning it up and proposing with that intersection and higher intensity buildings around it, cleaning it up. And today I'm happy to report, after the first forum, I think, one of the elected officials said, go get that cleaned up. So the city went out and actually beautified this triangle. The fountain's now working again. We have some trees, we have some landscaping. So out of this process came the beginnings of beautification for this area. A few other things we looked at. We also looked at, this is a public-private partnership. One of the other things we looked at was private property and what could be developed. Again, these are just concepts, ideas. The code is in place. So what can we do to intensify and densify the area, make it more livable, and have a wider, bigger opportunity for different types of retail. So this is the corner of 8th Avenue and 125th. This could be built today. Again, your code is in place to allow development such as this. This is on the south side of 125th, the same intersection. Again, a building that's in private hands. If you knocked out and renovated the building, knocked out the side of it, you could actually have a small corner cafe, restaurant, outdoor seating, so it starts to activate the whole area. Again, this is the pavement along 8th Avenue. Civic Center area to the east and south of what we just looked at is the parking lot across from City Hall. It's a parking lot, surface parking owned by City Hall. It's a couple acres, again, underutilized. And with this I don't know if you can see that very well, that's the site. We're not saying what could be built there, but you could do something like this, which is parking, starting to incorporate parking in one area instead of having it spread out, but allowing for retail on the bottom, again, across from the City Hall and Mocha complex. So you could have a variety of businesses on the first floor and then parking above. We're happy to report that there's activity along 125th Street. A property owner on the south side, where Deals is the supermarket, there's rather large parking lot fronting 125th Street. So a proposal is in to add more retail in part of that parking lot, creating a nice breezeway to the back. But what this does is start filling in that parking, so you don't have all that, like it's probably 2/3 of the block or so of parking fronting 125th Street, which creates a dead zone. You all may be familiar with this breezeway connecting 125th Street to the north, to the alley, and there's a small parking lot on 126th Street. Obviously, there's not much activity here. It's city-owned, and what could happen here is take this space and activate it by, again, renovating the building and allowing for outdoor dining. We've thrown in some slides just showing what could be done, as you've seen, with existing buildings. So this is, we're not proposing tearing it down or adding to it, but this building is right across from Mocha Plaza. How could we make it a bit better for the community? With some renovation, we could put in a few more restaurants, some landscaping, clean it up, and you have a great restaurant or two overlooking Mocha Plaza, and it sits up higher, so it would be a very nice view. Again, this is another corner 7th Avenue, 125th Street, kind of dead zone, 2 parking spaces. Take out the 2 parking spaces, allow for extra curbing, and we could have another small cafe, which is off the main street, so it's a little quieter and secluded. This is Mocha Plaza, obviously, with a strip of retail on the right side there, private ownership. And one of the proposals is, and this could be built now, you could actually build another mixed-use building, 6 or 7 stories with retail on the base, and restaurants, again, looking over Mocha Plaza. Then the next slide is the same area, and this was a student's idea, so I have to give him kudos. It's a great job. Another type of building would be office building, but again, you're activating Mocha Plaza. So this is another concept that a student came up with. What this shows is just focusing in a little bit more on the Mocha Plaza, the mega block, and again, the 1, 2, and 3 shows where you have potential to actually redevelop the site, create buildings or other uses, whatever we've come up with, or you've come up with during this whole process. So there's several acres of just parking that could be redeveloped. And this is just a summary of the few things that we tried to summarize, I think 10 or 15 pages of notes we got from the first meeting into just a few bullet points. We're not saying take down City Hall or MoCA or North Miami Police Department. These uses will stay. But what came out of the previous forums is, we need parking. We need open space, maybe a performing arts center, a historic museum, and more retail. Again, this is what you wanted to see. And so this will be flushed out eventually, but I think it's a great list. Sorry, I have a habit of. Sorry. This is just where we've been and where we're going. We're here. We've had the meeting in April 17th, May 14th, today, June 12th. We're going to do a progress report to the newly formed DPAC in a week or so. And then what we'll do is finalize this report and present it to the council at, I think, the end of July, basically. It's basically the end of July. And with that, this is one of Tanya's favorite quotes. And another thing I wanted to point out, a few things. If you have any comments, and you wish to email them, go to NoMi downtown at northmiamifl.gov. That's where we're collecting all the emails, all the comments. And this website just went online, nomiflorida.gov, Department, CPD, NoMi Downtown. That has everything, a treasure trove of information about this process and what we've done. And this plan will be uploaded that you've seen tonight. Will be there shortly. Right?
Yes.
Good. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bob.
Hi. Well, what I'm going to do first, let me go back a couple of slides. Tell me when I get there. This way? Okay. One of the main things, like I said, one of the main things that everyone talked about is that mega block idea and the Civic Center complex. Now, take into account, I'm going to stand over here because that's blinding me a little bit. Take into account, you're not going to take away City Hall. That's still going to be there. MoCA is still going to be there. The police administration building is going to be there. The conversation that's been going on is, what can you add to that begins to make it more vibrant, more user-friendly, makes it a destination? And so these are the things that people said they want to see added to, not taking anything away, added to. So, being able to look at the idea of centralizing your parking, and then that frees up some other opportunities. You take away that XX parking, and then you start looking at new residential, commercial, office opportunities where that happens to be. Looking at retrofitting park and open space. One of the things that was talked about in terms of the park and open spaces was the idea of potentially linking in a transit hub there, and also having ample bus seating, shading, having active recreation as well as passive recreation for both youth as well as adults. Adding a performance art center, having some level of retail that's there also, and retail includes retail as well as restaurants. You already have the MoCA there, but also potentially looking at a historic museum, and then also educational and special uses. And so those are the things that a complement of those things coming to bear. Now take into account that you're be working with the government, city, working with the private sector, and the market has to make that work in terms of viability. So not everything may fit at the same time, but it's also how you bring the best complement and number of those uses to the table. And one of the things that I wanted to ask you and see if is your thoughts, especially those who have not had a chance to get another forum. Is there something that you have been thinking that could be at that mega block that doesn't fall within these things that I've described? And also with that in mind, I'm going to turn it over and ask someone who hasn't been here before if they have an idea that's not been listed. I believe we've done a very good job of capturing it, but if we haven't, yes ma'am.
So do you add more bicycle parking? Like they have a couple, but there's only the one really. Actually, it's completely exposed to the elements. There's like bicycle parking with.
Okay, so adding more bicycle support.
Bicycle parking, so you're parking in the room in the sun and the shade.
Okay.
Because when you go to the museum, you go to these places right now, there's that one, and your bike is either going to get wet dry by the time we get to it.
Okay.
So, and for more spots, that just only fits the big lines.
All right. Another idea. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. A possible movie theater? Okay. I mean, that could be part of the retail activities as we consider trying to see if that's it. Okay. Any other suggestions? Yes, sir.
Cover your open areas with solar panels or regenerative or renewable energy, because that's going to really put you on the map. Because if you're redesigning new spaces, you have, for example, wide open parking spaces. What you really want to do is build something that makes people want to go there and see what is different. And plus, you get fantastic shading. You can take part of the city off the grid.
Okay.
And the costs are extremely low compared to buildings or
Suggestion?
other structures.
Any other suggestions? Yes, sir.
I don't know if it's a suggestion or a comment. My name is Kevin Burns, by the way. The only thing I see up there that doesn't cost us money to maintain is possibly the retail. City administration buildings cost the taxpayers to maintain. MOCA costs the city to maintain. North Miami Police Department costs the city to maintain. Parking garages, hopefully with retail, they'll generate some money. City Hall retrofit, again, money. Open space doesn't generate money. Performing arts centers that most municipalities own are underperforming and cost money to maintain, just ask North Miami Beach. Historical museums don't generate money. I think you need to put more stuff in there that is going to actually generate money, which will pay for some of this other stuff. And have yet to see in these presentations is how do you go to the property owners who own the property and control all this area today, give them an incentive to rebuild, sell, or build up that's actually going to be viable, that financially you cannot rebuild a building on the same footprint, even if you triple the size, and it's going to make money. It just isn't going to work. So what I like to see out of these, and as it's finally presented to the city council, is 1 or 2 mega private partnership projects that are going to generate money, rather than just the public aspect of it that is going to drain the city coffers at this particular time. Because
Can I ask you, because you're getting to an area that I'll profess I don't know that well, so I'm going to take your expertise, if you could throw a couple suggestions out there to be considered, what would those be?
well, as you said already, we changed the zoning, actually 6 years ago. So we changed the zoning to accommodate the things that can happen. You need to go some of those property owners.
Okay.
Give them an incentive, whether it's taxes, no parking requirements. Build a city parking garage with retail, absolutely makes a lot of sense. But go to concentrate on the property owners to give them the incentive to build, and people will come. Building a new city hall or performing arts center isn't going to generate money for people to come downtown for any particular reason with regularity. So I would concentrate on why should a property owner like Clark Reynolds be encouraged to sell his property or rebuild his property if he only can build the same thing there. It doesn't make financial sense. So it's all the economic development.
And what you've done is what we'll call foreshadowing. We have Steve Dubowitz who's going to be here. He's going to talk about the public-private partnership and how that's going to come together to achieve some of those things. So I'm glad you said this, so everyone else had a chance to hear beforehand. Are there any other suggestions? Yes, sir.
City standard was just expressed. And I agree. It's hard to get the private just to go off on smoke and mirrors. But I thought part of this exercise, part of the benefits of this exercise is that there would be a stronger vision. Not what could be, and it's great that we can do some things in the next few months, and by the end of the year, almost everything's proposed can be done. But having a clear vision on where the roadways, if we talk about bike paths, where are the bike paths, where are they delineated? If we talk about parks, where are the parks, where are the new parks, where are the expanded parks? If we're talking about additional construction, what does that look like? What does that building envelope look like? You showed a three-dimensional view of our one-story, two-story buildings, but what we really need is an envelope of showing what it looks like 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now when they are now 10 stories or 20 stories. And do you want a street wall? Do you want to have a sky plane exposure? Do you want to have it linear or sort of circular patterns? Do you want serpentine aesthetics? The student proposals start to play with texture and size and scale and landscaping. They're doing all that, and yet we're not doing that. We're not getting that carrot and stick effect out of this whole exercise so that the private sector could say, wow, there's a vision for this city, and I think it can happen. And even though we may not have the money for it to do every one of those new civic centers right now, you can go, wow, they've allocated space for it. Wow, they're trying to set aside this area for a certain type of uses, certain type of park. With time, we'll be able to acquire that land to create those parks. I may want to get the property near that so that I can, the property values will be preserved and enhanced over time. Yet we don't have that complete vision. We still are sort of poking around, and it's fine, but we're doing exterior decorating rather than really handling this in a long-range fashion. We really need to, if we're going through this exercise, should be looking decades down the line so that people could make their investment and feel comfortable with where the city's going.
Yeah, thank you. Other suggestions? Okay. Well, we are continually working to improve the product by hearing from you. And every time we hear something from you, it's always good suggestions. It always helps improve. It helps us add to what's going to happen. And also, the action plan itself is not intended to be something that's going to take place, all things that are going to take place next year. The action plan is long-term. The action plan also is having in place some of the things, and what we've tried not to get into is there is a certain level of planning minutia that even my mother, who doesn't want to hear from me, my mother loves me to talk to her, but she doesn't want to do that stuff. What you want to talk about is basically what are the things that have to be done behind the curtain. And there's a certain amount of changes to land development regulations that are going to be able to change what the building envelope is going to be, what the scale of buildings are going to be, what the design aspect is going to be. And so we've talked about those things not in a kind of more global sense without getting down into the how-to. We've not got into that we're going to go in and change this part of the zoning code to do that. But those types of things do have to happen. We're also talking about the other things, the physical things that can happen. Some of the things that can happen, some of them are immediate, some of them are longer term. With respect to 125th, that's a little bit longer term because the city doesn't own that facility. And that's going to be a negotiation that the city's going to have to enter into with the state of Florida that may be quickly done, or it may not, because it all depends on the variables. You're talking to a district office out in Miami, who then has to talk to the central office up in Tallahassee, and then also you bring the county into the picture. So where you can make those street improvements, we don't want to, we can give you how a street may be able to look, but at this time we can't tell you that change can take place here because DOT hasn't agreed to be that partner and sign off at that level yet to that facility. So those are part of the action plan. The action plan will say, you need to do this in order to do this. So you'll see those things as the process continues to go along. And so it isn't just simply solely the MOCA project and the ideas that Alex showed you, some of the visual. There are all these other things that have to happen to get you to your short and long-term outcomes. And with that in mind, part of the short and long-term outcomes that has come up is being able to start talking about how do you make it happen. And basically, there are two primary routes that we talk about to implement the action plan. And that's what I'm talking about. There are going to be changes to policies and ordinances that have to take place, both the comp plan, zoning ordinances, and other regulations that are going to be able to provide the incentives to existing businesses or new businesses, and also give you the development pattern and style that you want. And then there are also the capital projects. Those are physical changes that are going to be funded by the city, but in conjunction with the CRA and other sources of funding. Now, what are some of the physical changes to the downtown that have been identified? For the most part, things like street furniture, benches, bus shelters, bicycle racks, are some of the things that are being looked at. Better lighting, landscaping, signage, placing utilities underground, being able to look at intersection improvements, being able to look at how you incorporate public art into civic spaces. And so one of the things that has happened is being able to, the team has gone in and identified, if you start looking at those types of features, you start looking at where you're going to put in park benches and using reasonable standards about how far people are going to want to walk and maybe sit down. You start talking about bus stops, what is a reasonable walk pattern there? You start talking about street pavers and those types of things you're going to put in. You're going to do street widening. And so we've been able to estimate based on cost and standards from other communities, and taking that compilation of those things I just talked about, the streetscaping, all those types of things, on the major quarters within downtown, this is where the costs are, how the costs are breaking down right now. Northeast 125th Street, almost 10.9 million is what you were looking at. Northeast 6th Avenue, 14.6 million, and West Dixie about 22.5 million is the estimate for those types of costs. And one of the other things that is being done is being able to not only estimate what the costs are, but trying to figure out how to begin to pay for that. Not only at the Florida Department of Transportation, there are funds that flow down from the US DOT into Florida DOT that may be accessible for that. United States Department of Economic, US EDA, Economic Development Administration, they invest in being able to provide the infrastructure to help new business construction and creation, as well as retention of existing businesses. EPA is listed because that's a source of funding for brownfield redevelopment. Brownfields are those sites that may have actual contamination or they're perceived to have contamination, and therefore people are not investing in them. And so being able to get dollars from EPA to identify, is there anything on the ground, and also being able to get it cleaned up. Department of Housing and Urban Development, that's CDBG dollars that can be used for infrastructure, housing investments, home dollars also. Miami-Dade County has certain programs. The state of Florida has other grant programs, as well as the private sector. And those are the table of funds that will have to come together to be able to help the city, because the city can't raise that money and tax the citizens or tax businesses enough to be able to make these things happen. So it has to be done in partnership, and it has to be done staged. So that's what the action plan is also doing, is prioritizing as best possible what improvements can take place based on funding and also based on what the community is desiring to occur. Which I just said. And so basically, the action plan itself, when you begin to look at that document, it's going to break those things out. So if you want to go in and look at 125th, you can be able to say, if you're going to do these street improvements, what is the estimated number of the features that are going in? Here's how we estimated the cost, and based on that cost, that's how we got to that number. And then the funds here that are potentially available, general fund, those are general revenues, property taxes the city already collects. The parking revenues, these are things that the city has access traditionally. One of the things that's being looked at is potentially to what degree there is a community redevelopment agency, to what degree can you take tax increment financing. That's basically saying as property values go up, some of that money is held in check for use within the defined area to be able to do those improvements. One of the other things that's being able to look at, and this one is that's being done in other communities, is creating a business improvement district that would help fund infrastructure. Basically, the local businesses are pooling their dollars to help make an investment in the area that begins to help them economically in terms of their bottom line, the return on their investments. And then also, the benefit district is very similar to that, but it doesn't have the organizational structure that you have as a business improvement district. I'm going to not just go through these, just put them up there, but basically there are different ways and fees to going there. CDBG program, the city is what's called an entitlement program because of population. The city of North Miami gets about $1 million a year from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. About $777,000 of that is through the CDBG program. The rest of it is through the home program to be able to do housing rehabilitation and improvement. Some of that may be able to be partnered and be able to create workforce and middle income housing in the downtown community as well. And because we're running quickly low on time, this slide and all this information is going to be available online, but this is letting you know that we've looked. There's a consultant that is engaged by Keith and Stars Bob Gray and strategic planning consultants up in Jacksonville, and they are the ones who prepared this information, and they were very beautiful in what they pulled together. The local MPO, there are opportunities there as well.
This is a cool one.
Okay.
Very cool slide. And if I may speak to this?
Yes, please.
Thank you. This to me is probably my favorite slide because this has been implemented elsewhere where communities get sponsorships for park benches or plaques on trees or pavers, and people purchase those and do it in memory of and honor of. Very successful. It's used to really generate a lot of funds to pay for some of the improvements within your community, and it's very successfully done elsewhere.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
My name is Steve Zelkowitz. I'm the managing shareholder of Gray Robinson's Miami office. We are a 300 attorney law firm here in the state of Florida. For the last 9 years, I've served as your CRA attorney, going back first to the Kevin Burns administration, working with Councilwoman Steele and Councilman Galvin, through Mayor Pierre's administration and now the current administration. And I just I want to tell you all that I'm very proud to be your CRA attorney. I take your CRA very seriously in providing the legal representation. I live in Miami Shores, which is very close to North Miami, and I have to tell you, I'm very excited to see that after 9 years, and I know Councilman Galvin mentioned 14 years, at least for me 9 years to see this project moving forward, because it's a very exciting project, and I'm very proud to be a part of it. And I was actually very honored when your planning manager Tanya and the city manager asked me to come speak tonight, because they didn't speak at the other two forums you had. And as they mentioned earlier, they went out to the city of Miramar to talk about their town center project, which to me is the quintessential public-private partnership project. There was a success that started before the recession, lived through the recession, and is now still moving forward. And Tanya said that I was the mastermind of it. I perhaps was the legal mastermind of it. I mean, you have a great planning team who's here with you, who has done a tremendous job. So I'm not really here tonight as your CRA attorney. I'm here to talk to you tonight about public-private partnerships because I think, and this is all just food for thought this evening, that in order to make this project move forward and get traction and start so that we can have those private blocks redeveloped, you're going to have some sort of public-private partnership when it comes to the downtown city property revitalization. And I just want to go back. You did mention that your land development code and your comprehensive plan were redone 6 years ago by Charlie Seaman, I think it was. And I'm proud to say that Charlie is one of my partners now at Gray Robinson. So we've had a long-standing relationship with the city. We've rewritten your zoning code, your comp plan. We're deeply involved and invested in seeing you succeed. That said, I did hear both Alex and the manager use a word that I love to hear, and the word is redevelopment. And the city is built out, and in order to make your downtown viable, you will have to redevelop. So we like that word. What the city has that a lot of cities don't have, and what Miramar had and made their project successful, is you have the property right now. You own the property. The city owns these parking lots. on which the redevelopment that your planners and consultants are telling you is where this is going to start. So from that perspective, you're going to have to somehow craft a relationship, because as Mr. Burns had said, who's paying for all this? You know, how do you get this to happen? You're going to have a private partner who does this with you. So with that in mind, I just wanted to talk to you about public-private partnerships and what they are. And the pictures here that you're going to see are of the Miramar Town Center project. I do lecture on the project itself from time to time, and I do a little seminar called the ABCs of PPPs. And PPPs or P3s or whatever you want to call them are public-private partnerships. And public-private partnerships take many forms. I mean, it could be as simple as the city or the CRA giving a grant to a private property owner to do something, to a full-blown relationship with a 50-acre site where there's public uses that are developed and private uses are developed, and then public and private uses that are developed together. But in order to make any public-private partnership successful, it has to have certain elements, and you're already involved in this. Preparation, a shared vision. Now, when you get involved with a private entity that may be building something on the city's parking lots, you're going to have a clarity of the risk and rewards. You're going to have a decision-making process that's rational. Your leaders are going to need to be consistent in their positions. There's going to have to be open communication. There will be a deal, and there's going to be give and take in that deal. The city may give something. It may give the parking lots. It may sell the parking lots. It may lease the parking lots. And I know you all have a big project called Biscayne Landing, which doesn't really have a lot going right now, but that's another public-private partnership that has a tremendous potential. And that's the key for the CRA, which is a whole different issue. But building trust is a core value. You have to have trust between both the government and the private side in order to make any public-private partnership successful. Okay, so when you're looking at your downtown redevelopment, and I think your planners have been through this, I mean, we talk about things like traditional neighborhood developments, where people live, where they work, where they play. I think all of these things have been mentioned before. I think some of you asked me, what do I do when I'm not at the City of North Miami? I also have a planning degree, which I told Tanya, and she thought that was something she never even knew, and a lot of you probably don't know that. So that's why I like to get involved in these projects. So you've talked about all these things: residential options, community centers, village greens, transit stops, retail establishments, the interconnected streets, open spaces, and at the bottom are some examples of successful traditional neighborhood developments. You have the Miramar Town Center, Miami Lakes, if you've all been there, you know, and the other two and three are a little further away from us. So the North Miami downtown, in order to make it, from my perspective, and again, this is all just food for thought, you have a great central location, you have public development that's already occurred, you're going to have some redevelopment of those public facilities, you're going to have private development. And what you need and what you are working on and are working towards is finalizing is a master plan. What they did in Miramar that made it very successful is they had a pattern book. And we'll have some pictures from that. And basically the pattern book is when someone develops in this downtown core area, they're required to follow a certain architectural pattern, have certain types of features, because all those beautiful pictures that your consultant showed you, in order to make someone build that, you have to have those requirements in place, because not everyone's going to want to build a Mediterranean style or a Caribbean style. So you, as the city, are going to put that in place. So we have governmental land uses, and I apologize, as I said, I've used this seminar before. It refers to Broward County Library. That would, of course, be the North Miami Library. So you have a city hall, you could have a cultural arts center, an arts park, civic plazas, the library could be there, educational facilities. The parking garage is a key feature of any of these large developments. because in that parking garage, you can have both public parking for the uses there, for the government uses, and also the private parking for the private uses, as well as a transit hub. And I'll get to the garage feature in a minute, because in Miramar, that was a key feature that drove the development. The private land uses, of course, retail, we talked about, office, wellness centers, or healthcare type uses. I don't think that was discussed, but that's something that could be integrated: residential, condos, apartments, townhomes, and of course the parking garage. All right, so here in Miramar is where they got into this pattern book, which is an actual book that sets forth the types of uses, the land uses, the guide for where they go, open space requirements, and the like, and what they need to look like. So the developer who developed the town center, and the town center in Miramar looked like this. This is a 54-acre site. And basically, the city bought the property. They bought a 50-acre site. Their planning department came in and did a development and said, this is what we want to build there. Okay, I'm not sure that that's the way we would approach it. We have some land. We may say to people, what would you build here? But they basically built it. And this whole side here is the government center. And this is where you have a new city hall, an administration building, the Miramar Cultural Arts Center, the Broward County Library with the NOVA and BCC satellite campuses. And then this area here was sold to a private developer. And with the money that the city got for selling this land, they were able to build this. This is the main parking garage in the middle. The main parking garage was key because it provided parking for all of this and for some of this. And around it, they're building condominiums. And the condominium structure was very interesting because in the garage in the middle, they condominiumized the garage. And basically the city owned a number of spaces as a condominium unit, and the private developer owned another block of spaces as a separate unit, and then you had a transit hub where the buses would come in and bring people. I don't want to get too legally technical and bore you because I know we're sort of at the end here. I'd rather show you, these are some of the things in the pattern book that where, folks are required to have things like arcades and columns, specific details, window types, the massing of the building, materials that were supposed to be used so that you can have a consistent aesthetic throughout the downtown. Certain urban design features were required to be incorporated. The sort of blue purplish area is a arcade underneath the buildings and plaza areas at the end of that and in front of City Hall where people could gather. And those are things that you may want to incorporate into yours. This is the land use plan that was used. You can see, as I said, the government areas. The yellow is residential, and then the mixed-use commercial is in the lower right-hand area. So these are some of the pictures from the pattern book that showed, how they envisioned it. We'll see shortly what it actually looked like. Some of the pictures aren't that recent, but for any of you who've been out there, I think you'll agree that it's a very, very successful project. This is the promenade that goes, that I just talked about, that leads up to the City Hall. They, of course, went with this Mediterranean style. I think you saw some buildings massed like this in the pictures that your consultants are showing you, because this, I think, is what people want to see. This is what brings people into a downtown area. All right, these were some more renderings. Now, so the basic legal framework, and I'm not going to get into this, I'm going to go through it quickly because you may or may not do the same thing. If you're going to sell the land, you would of course have a sale and purchase agreement. You have construction agreements where the developer is required to construct certain facilities for you. A development agreement which requires them to build what they say they're going to build on those parking lots in a certain manner, in a certain time frame, and if they don't, you get your land back. And then there's a maintenance declaration because as we all know, who's going to maintain these open civic areas? You have to have property owners associations. They have to be self-financing. The city can't be the entity that pays for the maintenance of these open areas. Condominium documents, library agreements, those were all part of specifics of that particular deal. This is what the sale and purchase agreement looked like at the time. The developer agreement required the developer to follow a master plan, use the pattern book, as I discussed, project phasing, completion dates. Certain public facilities would be secured by letters of credit. There were FTA grants. Your consultants talked about getting grants from the federal government. They got those for the bus and mass transit hub. Restrictions on transfer, very important. You have that in your Biscayne landings agreements, that they can't just flip the project to somebody else, and repurchase rights. Development agreement looks something like this. The maintenance declaration, again, in this particular case, it was a larger site, so you had all kinds of requirements for payments and assessments, lien rights, and cross easements. That's what that document looked like. Condominium document, the whole private side of this development was done on a condominium basis, where all the different phases were condominiums and different blocks with a master association and then individual associations. Just the documents were extensive. So this is what the site looked like when the city bought it. They cleared the site. They created the stormwater system. They started building City Hall. They started building their Cultural Arts Center. It was completed. This was the Cultural Arts Center, completed. This was the private side starting to be developed. So the reason I'm showing you these pictures is just not to show you pretty pictures of a development that occurred somewhere else, but to show you that what these folks are showing you in their plans can be done through a public-private partnership. All right, they were very successful in Miramar. The project has, I don't even think it's complete today because of the recession, but you can see that things got completed. And, I don't want to be abrupt, but I wanted to get us done and give us a little time for questions and the like, if anyone had any questions. John. Hi, John. How are you?
Put your CRA hat back.
Oh, yes, I can. And I was going to actually mention something about the CRA in regard to a question that Kevin Burns had earlier, but go ahead.
Okay, I was just telling Chloe that can the CRA partner with the city on certain things, or does it have to be separate projects?
No. In fact, there's a statute that allows the CRA and the city to partner on redevelopment activities. So there's the ability, let's say, and we've done this already before, because you've had other projects through the 9 years the CRA has been in existence, which may or may not have been successful, but in working with the city, for example, the city could convey land to the CRA. The CRA could convey land to the city. CRAs can do things with their land that cities can't. They can put a mortgage on their property for financing purposes. They can finance things that municipalities can't finance, like the parking garage, perhaps. So there's an ability for both the city and the CRA to work together. As we all know, the CRA has some challenges ahead of it. There's a sunset date coming up. That's why it's very important that we're having these discussions now, so that we can get these projects in front of the county, so we can ask the county to extend the life of your CRA, to then get some of that TIF money from Biscayne Lending. I'm not saying all of it, because I know there's a large discussion about that, and I certainly don't want to, get in the middle of it, but some of it, so that you can finance some of this through TIF financing, perhaps bonding. Mr. Burns had an issue earlier about how do we get these private people, like, for example, a Clark Reynolds, let's say, to use or redevelop his property. Some of the tools we've used in other CRAs are TIF rebate agreements, where if you redevelop your property, you're going to create additional tax increment. So what the CRA can do is say, okay, we will rebate you a portion of that. Not all of it, but let's say 30, 40, maybe 50%, because getting the tax increment and keeping 50% of something is better than getting 0% of nothing, or 100% of nothing, excuse me, and leaving the building the way it is. So that's one way we've done it in other municipalities. Hallandale Beach does that, for example.
Could you clarify about the CIP, the projects that we put in the CIP cannot be funded by the CIP?
The distinction, that's the distinction.
Yeah, there's...
Before you do that, for the back of the room, could you repeat Tiny's question so everybody can hear?
The relationship between the projects that you have listed in the CIP, the capital improvement plan, and whether or not the CRA can fund those projects that are listed in the schedule, just to make a distinction.
There's a statute, and of course the CRA is a creature of statute, that says what you can spend money on and what you can't spend money on. There's basically three things you can't spend money on. And one of them is basically city administration buildings, like building a city hall or a police station, unless the other taxing authorities say okay, your other taxing authority is the county. Basically government operating expenses, the CRA can't spend money to pay the salaries of city employees who are not doing work for the CRA. And three, you can't spend money on city projects that are in the current CIP unless they are taken out of the CIP for 3 years. Some of you may recall discussions a few years ago where the CRA was looked at as a funding source for redeveloping your water plant. And the issue was it couldn't do it because the water plant was in the CIP at the time and would have had to have been taken out for 3 years in order for the CRA. Because basically the statute is preventing the municipality from using just the CRA to fund everything and anything, all right? We're specifically targeting redevelopment projects in a specific plan. And that's what your CRA is supposed to be doing.
Steve, one thing that is going to be important, I think, that we should clarify, is that in the creation of the master plan, I'll step back.
Yes.
In the creation of the master plan, there'll be a whole series of capital projects. One of the things that the CRA is trying to decide and get from the city is which ones of those projects are going to be funded by the CRA or could be funded by the CRA because they're within the CRA, and which then needs to go into the capital improvement plan. So there's a distinction as we are moving forward in this process that in the action plan we've identified all these capital projects. Bob told you the dollar amounts that we've come up with. Steve's CRA can pay for certain of those, so you have to make that distinction. Those decisions have to be made as to which ones the CRA is going to pay for, which ones go into your capital improvement plan. That's
right, and that's an excellent point and an excellent way to illustrate it, because once let's say the streetscape projects that were shown earlier by Bob, I mean, those are perfect examples of something the CRA could fund. It doesn't mean they have to do the construction, but they could fund it. But what the statute's trying to prevent is it being in the city's plan and the city just turning around and saying, oh, well, we committed to fund that in our CIP, but now we don't want to. And we're going to have the CRA do it. But if you tell us now that you want to do that and have the CRA do it, that's fine. We're happy to put that in the CRA plan. It just goes in a different plan. We have a gentleman in the back.
Good evening. I don't know if I have a question. Let me put it out. I came tonight because we were talking about a master plan and an implementation plan. But I hadn't heard it yet. For instance, hypothetically, 20 years ago, you could buy property of this game downtown for $20,000 a door. The county came in, built a basketball stadium, on the Martin Center, library, and now you can't touch it. Private sector basis, well, under $200,000. Now this is hypothetical number. The point I'm trying to make is that's a private sector solution. That's not public money building condos. Those owners benefited from public investment, but different. You The owners benefited, who were stranded there, from the public investment. Is there such a strategy you can use in North Miami that relies less on government and more on the private sector to get done what you need to get done?
Yeah, I think that's what I'm suggesting through the public-private partnership. And again, you know, this.
I'm sorry, but the public-private partnerships are you've talked about CRA involvement, you talked about TIF, CEGO. What I'm trying to say is that the public investment, if it's done properly, I guess, and based on what I've looked at before in the past, we rely more on the private sector coming to you saying, I want to leverage what little dollars you have so I can invest $1 million. And the question I have is, do you have a plan? Do you have tools? Or are you talking about a plan to do that? You're talking about tools.
Well, I am talking about tools because I'm not the policymaker. But if you're asking me, I see the potential investment that the city would make could be as simple as those parking lots. If you make those parking lots available to a developer and you put out an RFP, and this is just me talking not as your CRA attorney, I'm just talking as a planner and a lawyer and trying not to be a boring lawyer at that. You've got these parking lots that are situated in your downtown core that are surface parking lots doing nothing. You have your planners here saying these are the prime pieces of property for this redevelopment to occur. The city's not going to spend the money to do that. So what do? You have to get some private developer to come in and develop those lots. How do you do that? Well, you could just be like any other private party and sell them, or you could contribute them somehow, and maybe that's your investment. Not out-of-pocket money, not your taxpayer dollars, but an asset that you have that you can contribute to a public-private partnership. As I said earlier, there's a deal structure. It has to be a fair deal structure. But once those core properties are redeveloped, then what you're talking about is the other areas surrounding that redeveloping on their own through the market.
What you just did, you dumbed it down for me, and you basically came up with a strategy, not just tools. Now I understand what you're saying.
But that's just my strategy. I'm not the policymaker. I mean, I would figure out a deal structure that would somehow utilize the city property to make this happen.
But you also have I do want to add to what Steve's saying. You do have, when you improve the streetscape, the public realm, and you make it attractive, then it has a tendency to incentivize businesses to improve, take that opportunity to improve. Once you do that, then you start a cascade so that you get a critical mass of change through incremental changes in the public realm, which then influences the private realm.
And I've seen that work, and I've seen that work in increments like Hollywood, Hollywood pursued that path. I've seen that work, but you have to design an implementation strategy that's unique to the area where you are. And the thing that we're not talking about is we want to create a downtown, and we want to move it off the skin, and we want to go west. Nobody's talking about that. But the market is on the skin. The dollar value is on the skin. So how do you create that dynamic to move that west to get those investments? We're not talking about that. We're going to have a serious discussion about that issue.
One of the things that you have to remember is that although we're talking about the downtown tonight, this plan covers all the major corridors. I mentioned that at the beginning of my presentation. I showed you all the corridors. One of the things that Bob mentioned is that there are some connectivity opportunities to connect the downtown to Biscayne, to connect the downtown to the universities. And this master plan covers all the corridors. We're just dealing with just the downtown in this redevelopment forum because that's the first place that it's starting through, because this is where the city actually owns property, that it can create that critical mass. And I think Steve kind of alluded to that, is that once you start that at the public level, where you control it as a community, as a city, you can create those public-private partnerships that have that critical mass, which then stimulates the private sector to continue that and move that on forward. But yes, that's going to go all the way up Biscayne Landing. You've got design guidelines that cover Biscayne Landing, implementation strategies that cover all the different corridors, and the action plan covers all of those. So that's all in the plan.
Mayor Burns.
Thanks for your comments, Steve. I have a question. At what point do we bring the numbers guys to the table? The ones who can actually tell you what it's going to cost to get somebody to come and make our plans feasible. An example is that we had 3 hotels that wanted to build in the parking lot behind Clark's building, right across from the police department. The concept was build a parking garage wrapped around with retail and then a hotel on the top. Once they crunched all the numbers, 3 separate entities, they couldn't make the numbers work, even with the CRA paying for the parking structure at almost $80,000, $90,000 per parking spot. How do we, it's nice to talk about it, but how do we get something like that to happen? And, you know, we just spent $2 million on white sidewalks in downtown. Didn't make any sense, and took out all the trees that the CRA paid to put in. They took them out 2 years later, put nice benches in. So a lot of the signage and the benches and the trees that you put in were taken out to put the white sidewalks in. Now they're starting to put some of the landscaping back in. It didn't help the rents go up. The only thing that's been successful on 125th Street is the private gallery owners, the private retail stores that have been doing it on their own without the city's help. How do we get somebody, or when do we get somebody who is brains behind the numbers to know when a deal will make? Because we're not going to build a AAA arena in downtown North Miami that's going to bring tens of thousands of people. But at what point do you suggest us hiring economic experts to tell us what it's going to cost to build on every single site? Because unless you make an incentive for people to build, it's not going to happen.
That's a very tough question to answer, but I think.
That's why you get paid the big bucks.
Yes, of course.
As our CRA attorney.
As your CRA attorney, what I would suggest, just merely a suggestion, is perhaps it's at the point where you all have formulated a more definitive overall plan of what you want and which blocks you're going to contribute to this, MoCA mega block that you've discussed, and then you put out an RFP for a developer, and you have certain minimum criteria of what you want built there. And when those proposals come back, because I'm seeing the market. I mean, my office is on Brickell right now, and I look around, and all I see again are cranes. Okay, and all I see are now sites along Biscayne Boulevard in North Miami, the old Bank of America building, coming down, La Paloma, across the street. It's starting to happen in North Miami. So when you issue that RFP and you get some responses, you put together a team, and that team will include your planners, your financial analysts, and your legal team at that point.
You just made a very good point. La Paloma, across the street at 109th, and the Bank of America building are all owned by the exact same company, same family. Bank of America building is going to be a Kia dealership on San Susie Boulevard in Biscayne. Car dealership at the La Paloma site. All private money. Didn't ask for $1 from any city or the county or anybody. Didn't ask us for any money, but that's what they're doing. They did it on their own. But that's Biscayne Boulevard.
Right, and that's a car dealership. And you certainly don't want a car dealership in downtown North Miami.
Right, but nobody with that kind of money is even looking at downtown North Miami, so we got to be realistic of what we can build there. And that's where the money people have to suggest a hotel, you've gone, I think you've gone to the International Shopping Center shows, and the CRA has sent people there every year, the mayor and everybody else, we've all gone there many times. And they all say, listen, your footprint's not big enough, the money doesn't work, show us the money, show us the money, and show us the money. Hollywood, Sistrunk Boulevard, CRA went in and bought us the property, tore down the building, and gave them the land to build a grocery store. That's what we need to hear from you, Steve, that what do we have to give these people to get them to actually build in our city, other than just a little, tip increment? Do we need to give them a parking lot? What do we need to do?
You may have to. I mean, it's going to take a lot of sharpening of pencils and people sitting around and figuring it out. But I think the market, the time is right. I mean, I think this is, it's I don't want to say it's now or never for North Miami, but maybe it's now or never.
But I know they're looking to build a soccer stadium somewhere, and we're getting Stonewall by Miami, right?
Right.
There you go. So the arena, you have the arena, but
Right. We got 20 acres of Biscayne Landing, don't give it to us.
I'm just saying that I'm not using it.
I think they're, you know what, I love soccer. I think it's a great idea. Personally, I think they could do very well at Marlins Park since it's underutilized. But I think their timing is a little more imminent than our timing. I think we're still a little bit further away as far as the planning and RFP type things. But
Money, isn't that a different example of like private money and
Definitely. I mean, that's well-funded people. But it's not to say that there's not other developers who might view downtown North Miami as their next big development. And I can certainly say that there have been a couple who've mentioned it to me. So I don't think it's far-fetched, Kevin.
This is supposed to be a comprehensive plan. It's supposed to be a comprehensive plan, that's what you said. But I don't see any planning for the west side, the west side of 125th Street. You're talking about 125th Street and Biscayne Boulevard. Downtown, do you consider downtown where Boca is? Then what about 125th Street and 7th Avenue? What about that? Is there anything about that in your plans?
That's outside of the downtown. Remember now, we're just talking tonight about starting with the downtown. The plan covers the major corridors outside and the downtown core.
That's a major corridor.
Yes,
that
ma'am.
is a major corridor.
The plan includes covering that major corridors. So right now we're just focusing on the downtown corridor start. And then there's a plan that covers dealing with the major corridors elsewhere. And the design guidelines are all in there.
Is it there?
Yeah.
I would like to see a copy of that.
It's been done for some time. Okay. It's in here, but we're just talking about the downtown for tonight. But I think
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I'll make an appointment to see you about that.
All right, well, I'd like to thank you all for joining us tonight. Connie, did you want to say anything before we wrap up? Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I'm excited by the energy that I see in the room and by the building momentum that we've seen from forum to forum. We're at Forum 3, and as I've said at the two previous forums, there really is no silver bullet. I don't think any one individual has the magic touch to transform the downtown, but we recognize through the studies that have been done that there are pieces that you put together that will bring transformation over time. It won't happen next year. I want to put that disclaimer in. It certainly won't happen next year, but as you see with the case with Miramar, that was a case study, with Fort Myers, with Delray, there are examples. There are examples in place of cities that have been where North Miami is right now, and through a strategic planning approach, they've been able to transform the downtown over time. I think just in terms of responding to Mayor Burns' comment about bringing in that private sector interest, I'm happy to report, I mean, in our department, we see it on the front line, the interest that is there. We do get the calls, and I am aware of a major developer that is interested in doing exactly some of this mixed use that you see there. The public hasn't seen it because, of course, these projects haven't been submitted as yet, but the interest is there, and I think we should be excited as a city that, as Steve said, the timing is right, and the timing is now, and there are individuals with capital that can make this happen from the private side. So I thought I just needed to throw that reality piece in. But from our office, we see it and we get the calls and the interests are there. But again, I thank you. I encourage you to stay involved in the process. We have a website, if we could turn back the pages, just a few more slides, where we'd like to keep the public informed. Once the draft documents have been created, within the next 2 weeks, we'll have the first draft. I know Mr. Privitel asked about the details. That's important to us. It's important that the details are not lost. Everything that we've heard here tonight, again, there is no silver bullet, but your points and your comments are important. And the end result has to be a collective, comprehensive vision, and certainly not Tanya's vision or the planning department's vision, but a collective input that we've gathered throughout the process that we'll have conveyed to you in the draft document. So stay informed, check our website for updates. We do update that regularly, so at least you are aware of the draft materials and you can see the information before it moves forward to adoption. So that's the website. For those of you who'd like to get a copy of tonight's presentation, that will be uploaded by tomorrow, so you'll have that to share with anyone that wasn't able to attend tonight. But we thank you again for your time, and we're excited. Keep us informed, of course. Drop us a line. There's an email address there where you can send your comments if you weren't able to raise your hand and voice your input tonight. So thank you, and good night to everyone.